Hello, I am Jan from Prague, the Czech Republic, and today we are taking a look at the Canon RF 45mm F1.2 STM, a compact lens with an incredible maximum aperture and a really low price. Honestly, I didn't expect much at first, but it really surprised me, and it's not just about background blur in portraits. The extremely shallow depth of field opens up amazing possibilities for creativity. I really had a lot of fun playing around with this lens. Let's check it out. What is important to know about that lens? It's really small. What you can't see from these shots is that it's not cheap looking, and it was a great surprise for me because I thought that the plastic would be cheap, because it's really affordable lens. Let's jump to sample photos right away. All these shots were taken with the maximum aperture of 1.2, and so you can see the blur is really amazing. Photographers would typically not do it because the maximum aperture often means that you have to be extremely exact in focusing and the shots might be slightly softer. This is a detail from that shot. I was really afraid that it's cheap lens. I thought that the quality simply will not be exciting, but you can clearly see from these shots and from the details of it that it's not terrible at all. Of course, it's softer. I mean, any single lens under the sun is soft at the widest apertures. Yes, of course, but it's not bad at all. You can again some more examples, details of these amazing dogs, and me and the owner of the dogs trying to keep him calm. Again, I would not use 1.2 for my real life photography, so these shots are really examples of what to expect. One more important test. These are peacocks in the center of Prague. And I was just getting closer to the peacock and I let the camera to focus on its head. And when I crop the shot, well, I was really surprised. It's sharp, it's not soft, and it's a great photo. I was using Canon R6 Mark III, which of course takes part in the results, but still, it's not bad at all. The same situation here. I'm getting closer. I am letting servo to serve its mission. It missed for a couple of frames, but then it returns, and these shots are just as sharp as I'd like them to be. Again, aperture 1.2, so it's unreal what we are able to get out of this lens. Some more details and one more crop. I already mentioned I would not dare to use the maximum aperture for normal life photography, so here are some more examples when I switch to 2.2 or even to 4. And still the background is blurred, the photo looks great, and you are on the safer side because the focusing does not have to be so precise, and of course the shots would be slightly sharper. And even 7.1, I think it's too much. So some more examples. This is my dog. I guess the aperture would be something like 2.5 or in that area. One more dog. And again, you can see that not only the photos are nice, but the autofocus is really doing a great job. I thought that when I will be getting a lens for $450 that it'll be slow, and it's not actually. It's quite decent, and you're able to get shots of these amazing animals, which of course are extremely quick. Some more tests. If you want to really see how it works, I mounted the camera on tripod, and here we are going from 1.2 to 16. So of course the background blur disappears slowly, and this is 16. Yeah. What is tempting to do is to crop that shot, and I really wanted to see how sharp it is, because every single lens in the world would be softer at the widest aperture, and it's not that bad at all, I guess. And I did a very traditional test. I zoomed the letters here at 1.2, and this is 5.6. This is wide open result again from that shot. And yes, it's softer, but it's certainly not a disaster for the lens of that price. One more test. How does this lens compares to Canon RF 50mm 1.8? You can see it slightly jumps because this is 45 and this is 50. And here would be the crop. And the crop compared to the crop from 1.2 from the lens we are testing. And it's similar. But if you ask me where would I put my money, I would surprisingly go for 1.2. Still, of course, this is one of the most famous lenses and you should definitely have it because it's cheap and it's amazing, but it will be a great competition between these two lenses. And since I was testing on Canon R6 Mark III, I couldn't resist testing the speed of this amazing new camera. It can do up to 40 frames per second, which is here. It's more than 100 photos, so about 2.5 seconds. It's not that important. What really matters is that if you see these shots, they are clearly sharp. And I was really surprised because I frankly, again, did not expect that that sort of cheap lens would be able to do it. And one more interesting detail, if you crop the lady which is driving the tram, you can clearly see her face. She's smiling, so I hope she doesn't care that I am including her. And even if you do one more crop and you crop to this area, you can read some more info. And given the fact that we are using 1.2 aperture here for that shot, and it's sharp and it's not bad at all, I'm really quite impressed. Let's go for a short walk to the streets of Prague and let me point out extremely important thing about the lens. Of course, we know that it works amazingly with the background blur in portraits and all that things. Yes, of course. But the 1.2 is so extreme aperture that it actually allows us to work with the feeling of space, even in, well, sort of boring shots like that. The duck is there. This is, by the way, the crop from the shot. Well, again, amazing, I think, because it's on 1.2 and it's still pretty sharp. What I want to point out is that I am able to keep, thanks to blurred background, the feeling of space, even in shots of that category, like here, when these people are just watching the amazing Charles Bridge, and I am, even from distance, able to keep the feeling of space in these shots. I hope it makes sense what I'm saying, because this is something which is not typical, which is not common with more ordinary, so to say, lenses, that you're able to get the feeling of space into the shots like that. Yeah, this bird, we can crop it, it's surprisingly sharp again, and you can feel that even these shots in terrible light are having sort of interesting touch, because you can really feel that the space is there. It's like sort of 3D. Even that amazing creature, and one of the favorite animals for tourists here in Prague. And by the way, look at this. This is a crop from this shot and it's perfectly sharp. The detection was able to detect not only the animal, but also its eye. So I was quite impressed again. The space created thanks to the wide open aperture of 1.2. So if you ask me why I really like this lens, I would certainly say that that feature gives you a lot of creativity. It simply gives you the option to walk through Prague and take shots like this in bad weather, in terrible conditions, but still you are able to smuggle the feeling of space into shots like that, even the landscape shots like this, which is simply not doable with more ordinary lenses. I think the levels of creativity you are able to get out of it is simply perfect. And I really liked it. It is the same scene, but I'm focusing from different places on these three shots, and you can suddenly see that you are able to create space to keep the feeling of 3D in these shots, which is not as easy as it might sound. Same here, blurred foreground and a lot of variations, a lot of space, a lot of blurred things. Really liked it. And you can see how terrible the light was. So I'm quite happy I was able to do some decent shots. One more example of what photographers would really appreciate. I am able, even from distance, have two versions of the same shot. Here the flag is sharp, here the Prague castle is sharp. One more example how extremely shallow is the depth of field in these shots thanks to the aperture of 1.2. But please do not forget that once you take shots like that, you won't see much. And again, we are getting to the same conclusion as I mentioned a couple of times, that in real life, you won't be using 1.2. But sometimes it's amazing. It can really help your travel photos, for instance. This is a sort of cinematic effect, you know, from movies, that you take the shot through a crowd and the people actually help you to create a feeling of space, feeling of 3D, which is amazing. But do not over overdo it like here, because I can't really see what is here on the shot. But sometimes, like, to having that tree blurred means that you're able to get some sense of space into the shot, which is extremely important. And finally, a couple of shots from Prague at night, and you've probably seen this photo many times. For me, this is the most amazing, most beautiful view of Prague. And of course, we did not mention it explicitly, but it's clear that this lens might also be very useful for landscape photographers, because the quality of the optics would be really very good. Well, you can't really test it in November in Prague because the weather is terrible, but at least you can see how well it works in the blue hour when the sky is really blue. But these shots can really help you to create a bit of atmosphere of the night Prague. And once more, which is not typical and common, is that the statue of the king is sharp, is in focus, whereas the tower is not. Quite amazing, quite inspiring, and quite useful. And finally, I'm sure you're asking about vignetting, which is something photographers hate on their photos. And it simply means that at the widest apertures, of course, the lenses tend to make corners darker. You can slightly see it here. This is the 1.2, and when I go up, you can clearly see that the corners are not as dark as here. I can absolutely assure you that in a real life situations you won't care much, but still I wanted to test it. So yes, here is a wall in Prague 1.2, and if you compare it with these levels, you can clearly see that here the corners are indeed vignetting. They are really darker, slightly. It doesn't really make much difference, but it's still there. There is a very easy way out of it, which is called RAW. So this is JPEG directly from camera. If I open the RAW, look at this. You see what happened? No vignetting at all, no dark corners. Amazing. Same shot, which is not vignetting at all. By the way, the magic is done through the correction profiles. The Photoshop automatically loads it and fix the picture for you. If you do turn it off, you'll suddenly see the original photo. So, thank you so much for your attention. I hope you got a bit of inspiration. Take care. I am Jan from Prague, the Czech Republic.